Hello everyone, I'm Abigail Benham. I head up our Permanent Financial Services division at Frazer Jones. I am delighted to welcome Tara, who joins us today as CPO from HG Capital. Tara is somebody I've partnered with for several years now, and I've got to know her more and more. I've had the pleasure of hiring into her team, but also today is a slightly different approach from us. Tara is somebody that has had a magnificent career, that has excelled very quickly in some of the toughest environments. So today I'm joined by her to talk about crafting your way to becoming a CPO, but a very good one. Tara's experience across Deloitte, Apollo, and now HG Capital combines both a strategic, consultative, and operational approach, which means that she's a standout in the industry. Tara, you've moved into the role of CPO in a relatively short space of time and accelerated yourself so quickly. One of my first questions I'd love to know is, one, how have you done that in one of the kind of toughest but highest performing industries in the world, which is private equity?
Well, first off, thank you so much for having me. It's so interesting to hear it positioned that way, because looking back, I can very much see how things have been accelerated, and these have been some really, really tough firms. I mean, you look at some of the external reputations for some of these organizations, and they can be quite, difficult places to succeed and to thrive. I can absolutely see how it looks that way from the outside. I think the experience going through the process, definitely felt quite different. I have always loved psychology, and I didn't quite know how I wanted to apply that in a career. So I studied, at uni, I studied psychology, and that was psychology meets business. Oftentimes with many things in life, it's a bit of luck and a bit of timing, and then also a lot of hard work and a lot of effort. So that luck, sort of landed me an internship at Apollo back in 2012. I was out of a room with an advisor talking about how I wanted to apply my psychology degree in the real world. She had just received a call from a woman at Apollo who was looking for an internship with someone that had studied out of this program, and the rest was history. I had no idea how and where to apply the desire to work with people and these psychological concepts. I was so blown away by my internship at Apollo. It was 10 weeks, fast-paced environment, something new every day, smartest people in the world. It was just, I really felt like it was an incredible experience. And I was very sad to leave. I did not want to leave the firm at that time. And looking back, I had absolutely nothing to offer them. I was graduating university the following year, and the advice that I got, which was absolutely the right advice, was go out and get some training. And human capital consulting at Deloitte was definitely the right calling and the right next step. Was sort of applying psychology and working for CEOs, CMOs, CHROs. And what I really loved about that is you were able to go across many different industries. So I got a taste of what it was like in financial services, in insurance, in fashion. I worked for the government. I worked for tech firms. And essentially after my 2 years doing consulting, it was extremely breakneck pace, very intense couple of years, but I still found myself being drawn back to the environment and the setup and the people that I had within private equity at Apollo. And I think a lot of that comes down to building relationships with people and then being able to pull on them time and time again and build something together. I felt it was very challenging within consulting that you sort of went in for a project, you delivered something, and then you pulled out.
How do you make an impact?
Exactly. So when I got the call from Apollo 2 years after starting my career at Deloitte, it was an absolute no-brainer, and I have really never looked back.
That's really interesting, and I think something that you touched on that resonates with me so deeply is the power of people connection. And I think sometimes when we think about HR, that really is the forefront of every single decision you make. And it goes back to when I hire, one of the first things I think about is, could I put that individual with that individual in a room? And it's almost like matchmaking, but in a slightly different way. One of my other questions for you, Tara, is how did you make the step, and how did you find the journey from being a generalist and moving into the HR business partner seat at Apollo?
When I joined Apollo back in, would have been 2014, 2015 as a full-time employee, the team was incredibly small. The firm was incredibly small. There was no job called business partner at that stage, really across the private equity career. You had a very small team of committed professionals who just took on everything across the employee life cycle. I was the most junior person in the team. I worked for everyone on the HR team. I cut across all different geographies for the business. There was no understanding of someone who just did an internship program or was just doing reward or was just doing benefits. And so what served me really well with starting my career in a smaller firm and with that sort of generalist setup is that I got stuck into anything and everything across the employee life cycle and learned a lot. If I look back at the sort of key things that helped make me successful at that stage, it was being deeply curious about the business. Okay. So one example is running the internship program. We had a learning series where every week you had someone from a different business line coming in to teach the interns about private equity 101. And it might have taken me 3 or 4 or 5 years in some instances for extremely esoteric credit and debt products. But I stayed in the room, I listened, I asked questions. And while you just had so many dots, sort of on a blank page, over time, you started to connect those dots after hearing things over and over and over again and being deeply curious about the business and what everyone was sort of there to achieve. And then tying that back to the people and talent projects that I was working on was something that I did from the very, very beginning, which has served me really well as I've grown throughout my career. And as we now have this new job called business partnering, which is so much fun. And I'm so passionate about what it means to be a business partner and what a business partner is. And it's so amazing that we now have such a mature HR function and HR industry where you have operational professionals. Again, there was never anything called operations. As a generalist, you did the admin, you did the operations, you did the payroll, and then you were also in the room doing advising and supporting employees. So it's been quite an exciting journey over the past 10 years within private equity HR.
Amazing. And I think, again, I resonate particularly in my role, but understanding a business, the influence, again, that you can have with some of your stakeholders is completely different. They don't always know the world of HR, but how do you get around those individuals by talking about something that they're really interested in and they've spent their entire career studying, like private equity or a particular asset, et cetera, et cetera. You spoke about getting to know the business, which I think is so, so crucial, particularly in this environment. How are you going to influence some of these incredibly senior, intelligent individuals if you don't understand how a business operates and how it even generates new revenue? How did you gain that ability to influence, to have that kind of seat at the top table?
This is such an amazing question, and this has to be something that we talk about within my team on a weekly basis. And it's probably one of the most commonly asked questions that probably any sort of C-suite role that folks are really interested to dive in more to. And for me, I see such clarity around the answer, so I would be very happy to share more. And this really applies at any stage of your career, which I think is great about this framework. So I want to cover that first, and then I want to talk a little bit about what it means to be a CPO and what that role looks like. First, around just how do you get a seat at the table? It really starts with delivering results. And if you can deliver results and become a trusted person who becomes a go-to, you will get access to more and more. You will get pulled into things. That means a whole bunch of subtext items. So one is understanding the business, understanding the team you're supporting, asking questions if you need to, kind of understand the broader contextual items, not only within your business, but within the broader industry. So that may mean subscription to the Financial Times or the Economist or the Wall Street Journal. Read the things that the people you're supporting are reading and plug into conversations that you hear about these articles which came out. Yesterday, there was an article about another private equity firm who was leaning into agentic AI and thinking about how that might impact the workforce. It was really cool to have read that in the morning, and then that article and discussion came up in the afternoon with a bunch of senior stakeholders. So it's really about delivering results and building trust, and that will then allow the whole rest of the process to follow, because if you are adding value, you will be included. Folks who sit there and are saying, I'm not in the room, I'm not in these conversations, you've got to really flip the script and think about what are the key priorities of any person who I might be supporting, who might be more senior to me? That can be someone within the people team, within the business. And if you get into their head, get into their mindset and think about the things that could be on their mind, things that you can be proactive around, and then any problems that you're finding within the business, coming up with solutions, and not just one solution. Coming up with 2, 3, 4 solutions, and then being able to talk through those solutions, and not in terms of pros and cons, but using the framing of trade-offs, because anything is possible within private equity. It makes it very challenging to operate successfully within this environment. But if you use trade-offs around cost from a financial perspective, from a cultural perspective, using different lenses, you can sort of help to guide the business and then lean more from that operational into the strategic.
Tara, I think if anybody is listening to this video, you can utilize all of that advice in, quite honestly, any role that you're in the workplace. I mean, it just shows that you are a fantastic role model. It's about thinking outside the box. It's about adding value in different ways. And that's how you craft your way to having a seat at the table with the people that you want to be around. As we well know, HG have gone from strength to strength. I mean, what a phenomenal organization. And I think something that you've built and alongside all of your colleagues is an environment that is inclusive, integral, incredibly high performing, but with a really modern and dynamic approach. Obviously, you're relatively new to the CPO seat, but how are you finding the role of a CPO? And what does that almost entail for the business?
It is so much fun, first and foremost. HG is a great firm. It's a great platform. It's a really amazing group of people, very entrepreneurial, very flat, and folks really deeply care, which makes my job much easier, I would say. So I am relatively new in the CPO role, so we have to take what I'm saying with a grain of salt. We're sort of 6 or 7 months into what I hope will be, a much longer journey, and I'm so excited to continue to grow with the business and grow with the industry. What I have found thus far is it's really about 3 key things. So the first thing is about alignment. I often feel as though I am the holder of alignment. And what do I mean by that? It's having a razor sharp focus about the commercial goals of the business, understanding where we are tracking and what our talent and people priorities are. And then there's a sort of triangle that forms with what's actually going on in the day-to-day of the business, what ear to the ground, what's coming up through the system at various levels, within various teams, in various offices. And not always do you see a perfect alignment in that triangle. Okay. So it comes to the second point, which is really around awareness. So if you know with such clarity what the goals are, where you're heading, what the commercial priorities are, and you are gauging where there might be misalignment or gaps, it then is the third thing, which is through that awareness, which can be very challenging to stay aware as you get more senior in various roles or you get deeper in pockets of the business. It can be difficult to get high quality information. It can be difficult to really, understand the full lay of the land because your purview changes, all things which can be quite difficult to anticipate earlier on in your career. And the third biggest thing I would say that I've learned about being a CPO, and this is a skill that every business partner, whether you are 1 year into business partnering or 10 years into business partnering, and whether you're on the operations team or in a reward function, this applies within HR, it's bravery. You have to put your neck on the line almost daily to be calling out where you see gaps in alignment so that the business is aware, because really small gaps in alignment can create huge differences with where the business is heading over time, and those small gaps can snowball. So sometimes it takes a lot of guts to sit the most senior person down in the business and say, I need to call this out so you're aware that we're not on track with this. And if we don't course correct, it's going to create a much bigger problem.
Tara, that was incredible advice. Thank you so much. And you bring things to life so well. And I think, for everybody listening, there are 3 key focuses that Tara has just stressed. And that is alignment, awareness, and bravery. Take that into every day of your role and you will succeed. So Tara, as we know, or maybe you don't know, HG Capital are a software services investor. I don't think we can kind of continue without us talking about the impact that I suppose the industry and data and AI is having at the moment. And given you're working for a firm that's market leading in that space, what advice do you have?
This is such an exciting time to be in HR. And I feel so incredibly lucky to have a role within a firm which is very much on the front lines of this, revolution and disruption within the industry. Number one, it is a really momentous, very, incredible and meaningful moment within the industry and within HR in particular. We are already working in an augmented manner. So we have a number of different AI tools, and employees are heavily encouraged to be experimenting and using those tools on a day-to-day basis. And we track the engagement and take-up of those. So it's pretty off the charts. I mean, it's close to 80-90% on a daily, weekly basis across teams, and that cuts across the people team as well, which is super cool. So most times when we are pulling together various proposals, we're writing emails, we're working on various things for the business. The question is always, and how have you used AI to get scalability, to make this better, to save time, to create efficiencies? Now, I will take a step back. There has been a lot of chatter about AI taking jobs and what that may look like. There are some early waves of things that we're seeing that are being automated. I think within the private equity industry, we tend to lag a bit behind tech and behind some of these other spaces. And we also have much smaller relative employee bases versus some of these bigger firms. So it absolutely will come. Our view and what we often say internally is that AI will not take your job, but someone who knows how to use AI will. So if right now it's really all about working in an augmented manner, I often encourage people to download the apps on your phone, find a way to use it in your personal life. It's amazing if you just switch from Google to ChatGPT or some other tool, how many use cases you'll come up with from a professional standpoint as well. And the caveat there is, of course, tech and legal and compliance. You have to have certain governance things in control within your current firm. You can't just download the app and start feeding work product through if you're not quite there yet as a firm. There is no silver bullet around data. This industry and private equity HR in particular has always been very, very data driven. And it makes a lot of sense because we are interfacing with investors who have a very high degree of financial acumen. So we do need to be able to talk their language and translate softer metrics into harder metrics. So the idea of sort of a cultural P&L or having some key metrics, which are very difficult to argue with. So whether it's tracking, turnover, good turnover versus bad turnover, and actually assigning a value to the things that you agree with your senior leadership team that are absolutely key from a cultural perspective. You can completely translate those into quantitative metrics and report on those on a regular basis.
And you're right, it's about adopting to the new technology. And I think that those that won't and the organizations that won't will fall behind. I think that's already been proven. Tara, thank you so much. You are an absolute inspiration to so many people that want to elevate their career at also a pretty young age. Like, you are just phenomenal. I wish you the best of luck in your new role. I hope you continue to thrive, and I look forward to our continued partnership.
Thanks, Abby. Thank you so much for having me. This has been wonderful.